Hey folks, Kevin here. It's May 8th, 2020. I'm over in the work area right now, and I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the locust trees that we've been growing here on site. What stimulated me to talk about this is another YouTuber, Tim from Tim's Homestead, had posted a video and talked about how he was frustrated with some of the thornless honey locust trees that he had purchased and started growing, and how, geez, I think out of about 15 plants, he said 3 to 4 are actually thornless. And I thought I'd share my 2 cents about some of these honey locust trees. We have black locust trees, and I purposely selected the black locust variety that actually has smaller, less prominent thorns. They still can be frustrating, but they're not the type of thorns like the seaberry thorns and all that are like needles that could easily puncture a tire. So the thorns are short and blunt, and if necessary I'll do another video on the black locust trees, but I've been doing videos on the black locust trees on a living fence that we have along a stone wall, and excuse me, I absolutely love the black locust, and they do have thorns trees. Each one of the flowers produces a different fragrance depending on the variety of honey locust that there is, or the black locust. And they flower at all different times. They're not early leafers or flowering plants. Now, we live in Oswego, New York, and this is May 8th, so the leaves aren't out on any of the honey locusts or the black locust trees yet. We have weeks before they'll start to leaf out and start to produce their flowers and all. But by having both black locusts and a variety of different thornless honey locust trees, we have different timing of the nectar and pollen being produced throughout the season. Now, I'm not a botanist, and I usually break trees and plants down into being either monoecious or dioecious, meaning do they have both the male and female parts on the same tree, or do you have a male flowering tree and a female flowering tree? And the honey locust is sort of an in-between plant. And by choosing the right varieties and where you plant them, I think can reduce the chances of lots of these big seed pods. Now, with the black locust seed pods, the black locust entire seed pod is just a few inches long with multiple tiny little seeds inside of each one of the pods. Where the honey locust seed pods, they can be quite large, a foot long, and be quite problematic for people to clean up in the fall or winter months, because it can create quite a mess. So some of our honey locust trees that we have here on site are seedless varieties. In other words, not only don't they produce thorns, but they don't produce seeds either. So that's really beneficial depending on what your goals are on your property and what, so like some of our honey locust trees are shade master honey locust trees. Rapidly growing trees, get probably 60 to 70 feet tall, and because of the way that the branching naturally occurs and all, and the very small leaf structure, it gives you somewhat of a dappled shade depending on how you place them in your landscape. Are these true nitrogen, so that with a honey locust tree, are they true nitrogen fixing trees that actually have the symbiotic relationship with external nodules on them? I don't see that on any of my honey locust trees. However, the beneficial relationship, the symbiotic relationship that they have with nitrogen fixation is within the root structure itself. So you don't see these nodules on the outside of the roots so that you may see in many other nitrogen fixing plants. So, and I don't want to get into a whole discussion about nitrogen fixation with honey locust. I've done that before in previous videos. But I think that having the honey locust in a food forest can really be beneficial. And I actually think having the smaller black locust thorned trees can be beneficial as well in a food forest, as long as you get the varieties that have the very small, broad thorns. And I think that's about it that I want to say about those. We have several different varieties of the honey locust. We have one that's called the sunburst, one that's just called the yellow honey locust, the shade master, and then we have a couple that I think are crosses that we've developed here. And we actually have a weeping honey locust as well. Really interesting plant, small tree. So I thought what I do is throw on my helmet cam, the little GoPro camera there, and hopefully, and now these trees aren't leafed out yet, so you don't get the whole perspective of them being leafed out and how much shade there's being produced. But it is a little bit sunny today, and hopefully the GoPro camera on the helmet will show some of the features of these trees. We have one tree, unfortunately it's right in the eastern garden beds, that is prolific producer of these large seed pods with the seeds. And and I'd say that maybe out of 100 trees that I start growing, I might have 2 or 3 out of 100 that will develop thorns, and I just eliminate those when I have those. The ones, excuse me, these thornless varieties that we do grow aren't as fast growing as the shade master, some of the other varieties, but they really do, I think, add to the diversity in our food forest as well. So what I'll do now, I'll throw the helmet cam on, we'll take a look outside at some of these trees. So here I am along the western living fence line that I started with black locust trees. Here you can see a whole bunch of different black locust trees. On the trunks you don't see much of the thorns. Here's one with some of the thorns on them. Hopefully you could see these here. They really aren't much of a problem. It'd be difficult for these to punch a hole in a tire as compared to the sea berries, which I've had lots of holes. But here we are. You can see hopefully in this branch here some of the small, I'm sorry about the wind. It's what happens when we get onto the west side of the property here. And I'll be showing, so down here, here are some of the elderberry plants that I've transplanted over here. They work their way all down in amongst these black locust trees here. So the corkscrew or curly willows, they're just starting to leaf out now. I'll make a video on the living fence with the corkscrew or curly willows. This is one of the shade masters here. So this is a shade master that I planted maybe 12 years ago initially, and I planted them in different locations, and then I moved them both right over to here about 9 years ago. And so these are a seedless and a thornless honey locust, and they're rapidly growing. They get probably 60 to 70 feet tall, have nice interesting branching patterns. I don't do much with pruning. You could see some of the pruning that I've done with some of the lower limbs, but these trees have been really nice and rapidly growing. I'll walk over here and show you This is one of the honey locusts that we start many of our honey locust seedlings from. And this produces the male flowers and does not produce any seed pods. I've got some pruning to do so I can get underneath this one as well. Unfortunately, I put the female right in a spot where the garden plot is. So we get lots and lots of large seed pods that come from this honey locust here. Really prolific producer. And the thornless seedlings or small trees that we produce from this, probably greater than 95% of them don't produce, don't have any thorns at all. We'll go out back here. When it's in the 30s and windy like this, it's quite bone chilly. This right here, it ends up being one of our weeping honey locust trees here. This one requires quite a bit of work, and I really don't recommend them. They are beautiful, but not something I'd recommend. This is a honey locust right here. This is a golden honey locust. This one grows pretty rapidly. This is also thornless, and this is a male. And I prune this one pretty heavily, really coppice it pretty heavily every couple of years. So I'll probably come through if I get a chance after I get some of my other pruning done, get this one pruned pretty heavily again. But this really gives that bright, beautiful golden or yellow appearance to the leaves all season long. This is another Shade Master honey locust here. Again, another thornless one. This one doesn't produce seed. And this is another honey locust. This is a hybrid one that we ended up producing. Again, none of these have thorns. And come over and show you the tractor that's broken down here. I got to work on this. This is a 4-year-old thornless honey locust, one of the young ones that we started here. This one's this was put in some pretty poor soil. Initially, it's next to a pawpaw. And this one has done pretty well since the soil has been improving since using the wood chips over here. And so this is a standard seedling that we have, and we have multiple ones all around in here. I can't think of any of the other honey locusts around here right now. Here's another one. Have some wind damage to a couple of limbs on this one, but this is another really beautiful looking honey locust tree here, and this is another thornless one. So they can be beautiful shade producing, a nice dappled shade producing tree, and I really like these an awful lot. And Timmy keeps, yes, Timmy. Oh. All right, let's go back in and close this video off. So I hope the audio turned out, excuse me, the audio wasn't too blasted by the wind out there. I'll see when I try editing this video. The black locust trees I absolutely love. I think that the thorns are manageable, and they make a great living fence. Lots of great uses for the black locust. It's make great tool handles, make fantastic wood if you can keep the trees pretty straight and prune them effectively, so you can have really decay resistant logs as well. I plan on propagating a heck of a lot more of the black locust trees in the future. The honey locusts, I've really been propagating those for several years, and mainly the ones from the eastern garden plot that I mentioned earlier. And it is tough to know that you're going to actually end up getting a thornless tree ultimately when you're purchasing them, because of I think because of its proximity. The mother tree that they're getting the seed pods from, the female tree, isn't necessary. Excuse me. These trees aren't strictly dioecious. They're called polygamodioecious, meaning that not only is there trees that produce mostly the male flowers, and trees that produce almost all female flowers, but they're not absolute. There are some flowers that are produced on each of these trees that have both the male and female parts. And there's a possibility when you have a tree like this that you can have cross-pollination and have more of the genetics for producing the thorns. I'd say maybe 2 to 3% of our trees that we produce from that one tree actually develop into a thorned variety. And the thorns are pretty large, even larger than the ones on the black locust tree that I showed in this video. So I completely eliminate those because they can be, they can cause injury to people. They're more of a hassle, especially if there's wind damage and they need to get pruned and all. And it certainly could puncture a tire with the honey locusts that are thorned. They're pretty darn big thorns. So I think having the diversity of the honey locust varieties is really potentially beneficial. I like diversity and integrating those into the food forest, and I really enjoy the different colors of the foliage. Some are lighter greens, some are darker greens, and some are bright yellows, and some are a beautiful golden color as well. I'll try to point that out and show videos as this season progresses. Certainly the leaves will turn a yellowish color and then brown in the late fall on all of these trees, but having trees that stand out with the various color foliage during throughout the seasons is really nice. The other thing that I really think about having that's really nice about having the different varieties of the honey locust is the nectar and pollen being produced at different times for all the beneficial insects. So that's a tour of the honey locust trees that we have on site and my 2 cents on them. If you've got thoughts or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. Very valuable information. And it's tough picking out a good seedlings to plant on your property and not knowing will they develop into a thorny variety ultimately. So I hope you found this video of value. If you did, please give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and by all means, folks, stay safe and take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye now.